now that we're going to move past the issue regarding physical, non-physical, subjective, and objective frames of reference, let's go ahead and move along into building up the mathematics. So assuming that everything that exists have both physical and non-physical attributes, therefore the physical and non-physical are dual aspects of the same quality. So for instance, let's let quality be that this object has the quality being calculator, but that quality has dual aspects, a physical and a non-physical aspect. And those would be the dual qualities of this calculator. The non-physical manifests, the physical is manifested. So the non-physical aspects of my mind manifest the physical attributes that come out as the sound waves that you then later hear, and so a message is transmitted through the physical manifestation of the non-physical thought in my physical brain that then made my mouth transmit a physical attribute of information through a wave, sound wave, that you then later hear, and your physical brain interprets it so that you can hear what I'm saying and have your own thought about it. So that's sort of, if you will, an easy way of drawing this is, let's make a, I don't believe that this is an analogy. Okay. So let's just go ahead and have a common frame of reference. And what we're going to let this be is, this is actually a sentient being, and this is a sentient being. And they're observing each other. We'll let this be sentient being A, and this will be sentient being B. And they're observing each other. This obviously is objective. This is where the objective object reality occurs. And then back here is the subjective for A, and here's the subjective for B. And they're having their subjective, non-physical experience of their objective reference of each other. So, this could be me talking to you right now, and then this could be you later on listening to what I'm saying. So here's the thought in the brain that comes out through me talking, that then you hear, right? You hear it, and then your brain processes it, and you have your own thought about it. And clearly your thought and my thought are completely separate and distinct. I can't read your mind. I don't know what you're getting out of this, no more than you probably can interpret what I'm saying in the exact manner by which I want you to interpret it. So clearly your subjective frame of reference and my subjective frame of reference are distinct and separate. And that's probably not something hard to argue. Most of us could probably argue it. If, for instance, you can't read someone's mind, there's all kinds of arguments, very interesting philosophical arguments about the whole issue of mind and whether or not a robot could be created that mimics a human being enough that you think it's alive but it isn't, and just all this stuff. But basically what it gets down to the bottom line of is that it's easy for us to imagine our subjective frames of reference being different. So point being, it's fairly reasonable for us to assume that two different sentient beings can or do have a different subjective interpretation of maybe the same objective stimulus. But we can also imagine with this that, I'm speaking to you, via internet through me having recorded something, later edited it, uploaded it. Now you're watching it, and the time between you watching it now and me having done it now, those are two different nows. Those are two different moments. Even though it's the same moment per se, the moment relative to me is not the same as the moment relative to you. So just as the subjective frame of reference is different, which is easy to tell, we can put a line, and we can divide. This so that there's my objective frame of reference, and that's me speaking into a video camera, if you will. Okay. So this is the objective frame of reference relative to A. And then over here, you're watching a computer, and the sound's coming out of speakers, and you're watching it. And that's the objective frame of reference relative to you. So clearly your objective frame of reference and my objective frame of reference are different. So the question is, are our objective frames of reference ever the same? And what I can tell you is that as far as modern physics is concerned and the definitions of inertial reference frame and a lot of assumptions in special relativity that make their way into general relativity, and also assumptions that are present all throughout classical mechanics and to a small extent in quantum mechanics, that it is assumed that yes, two different things can share an objective frame of reference. For instance, it could be argued that if another person was standing here present with me, and we were both looking at this chalkboard that we both, we're both sharing a reference frame. Well, what I'd argue is that, he has his angle of the board, I have my angle of the board, and that basically for all objective frames of reference, no two observers or no two sentient beings or no two objects, or however we're going to, loosely or tightly, speak of this, but basically the only way you're going to end up with two observers having the same objective frame of reference, or two objects sharing the same objective frame of reference, the same coordinates, if you will, is if they are actually the same thing. And this concept is going to come up and be a very strong concept much later on, but basically one of the fundamental assumptions in Existics is that not only are subjective frames of reference distinct and different, but so are objective frames of reference, and that objective frames of reference and subjective reference follow those basic rules we already established. A over B is not equal 1. A over B is not equal -1. And that A is not equal 1 over B, or B equaling 1 over A. So applying these rules to the reference frames, basically what we're getting at is that no two objective frames of reference can be the same, no two objective frames of reference can be the opposite, and no two objective frames of reference can be perfectly complementary, and the same for subjective frames of reference. What you should begin to see here is that the fruit in applying the concept of subjective frame of reference to the idea of reference frames is that it allows us to more or less conceive of the notion that objective frames of reference are not only different, but even in situations where we assume them to be the same, they are still different. So going back to the postulates, we left off with that the physical and non-physical are due aspects of the same quality. And from that, the physical manifests, the physical is manifested. The non-physical forms, the physical is formed. The non-physical animates, the physical is animated. And again, arguing the distinctions between these two really becomes a moot point, and we'll see that much further. It's much better with these concepts to use a looser, more general definition of the terms. And the reason why is because that's what allows what we're about to do to work. And not that it doesn't work with the specific definitions of these terms either. It's that the conundrum that arises when trying to distinguish physical from non-physical, animate from inanimate, or form from formed, that problem becomes more clear as when we elaborate on this.